I'm going to give the overview of the 3 case studies in South Africa. So in South Africa, we opted for doing 3 case studies. All our case studies basically involve multinational companies, small-scale fishing communities or coastal communities, and various government departments at all levels of governance. In some instances, we also have customary systems of law and governance in place, which obviously adds a layer of complexity to the conflicts. So this just gives you an understanding of where they're located: the Olifants Estuary and Saldanha Bay areas on the west coast of South Africa, and Richards Bay on the east coast. And the team comprises myself, Pelile Mbata, and Johanna van Hult, who are on the call. And then we also have a PhD student and a master's student working with us on these cases. So in a very short space of time, I'm going to try and give you a quick overview of 3 cases, which is quite a tall order. So the first on the west coast is the Langebaan-Saldanha area on the west coast. Basically, Saldanha Bay, Langebaan area is an inland, it's a lagoon area. It's in the northern area of this lagoon system. It's been identified as an important industrial development zone. It is the deepest harbor in South Africa. It's also important for, in terms of transportation and stockpiling of mine materials, important for fishing, aquaculture, and tourism. So on the one side, the northern side of this lagoon system, you have a seaside town and the IDZ in the Saldanha Bay area, and then to the south, you have a Ramsar site, so immediately one can see a conflict of interests there. So in this instance, the key drivers of conflict are the increased push for industrialization in this area, and that's obviously been enhanced by South Africa's Blue Growth Initiative, Operation Phakisa. And what we're seeing there is increased approvals of mining along the coast, with a result of the increased tonnage of mineral ores passing through this port, and major concerns about dustfall and air quality concerns. So the focus in this particular study has been on air quality issues. Other drivers of conflict include very diverse views amongst the various stakeholders, and in fact, different levels of government having different interests, with the local government being more concerned about air quality, whilst the national government is much more concerned about job creation and poverty alleviation. And generally, weak governance is probably one of the key issues there that is inhibiting or preventing moving through this conflict. The second case study is the Olifants Estuary on the west coast. So this is one of a very important estuary in South Africa. In fact, some years ago, it was identified as a potential Ramsar site, but it also is home to a number of traditional fishing communities who have been involved in a very long land claim. And very recently, there was a land restitution case, which was recently settled. And so the big threat there is mining. So we're having increased ad hoc mining approvals, heavy mineral sand mining approvals, and diamond mining on the beach surf zone and in the surf zone area. So this is threatening these important estuarine environments. And we have communities, as I said, who have been part of this land restitution case. But what we find in many of our coastal communities is these unequal power dynamics between the local communities and the applicants or the mine companies and government who are pushing their particular agendas. So in this instance, we have a very clear conflict between mining and food security and livelihoods. So clearly here, competing interests, claims, and values. If we move over to Richards Bay on the east coast, this is an area that's also been identified as an important sort of industrial expansion area, part of the Operation Phakisa initiative. So here we've got applications and actual projects underway for in coastal mining, a lot of offshore and oil and gas applications, sea cage farming, and proposals to expand the harbor. But to the south, and in fact, in the surrounding areas of Richards Bay, we have many small-scale fishing communities who have lived here for several generations, who are very dependent on the coastal and marine environments for food and livelihoods. So again, we see these very different interests: large-scale mining companies, aquaculture proponents, government who's supporting and pushing these, versus small-scale fishing communities. A big concern in this particular area is threat of displacement of this Dube community and loss of their access to the historic lands and fishing areas. So obviously, I'm not able to go through each case study in terms of findings or progress and findings, so I'm just going to try and give you some general sort of insights thus far. I mean, certainly what is very clear to us is that South Africa has a very aggressive blue growth strategy, which is actually at odds with its own national policies and laws and commitments that it's made to various international instruments. And at the same time, so it's very much pushing economic growth and not giving much attention to community rights, social justice, and environmental conservation. We see that community voices are not being heard. They're largely being excluded from planning processes, EIA, and decision processes. And this has been exacerbated by COVID, because a lot of these processes have been conducted online. And of course, many of these communities don't have access to the internet. And these, very different power dynamics or differentials between local communities and then the government being very supportive of these blue economy proposals and proponents is reducing the possibility of constructive dialogue and negotiation. So whilst this is a goal we'd like to work towards, we're actually having to look at alternative strategies to ensure that coastal communities' voices are heard and that their rights are not trampled. And so communities are working with social partners, and we include ourselves as those social partners, because we are working closely with a variety of NGOs, CBOs, legal NGOs in the country to ensure that communities are getting the information, providing technical advice, and trying to facilitate access to these EIA processes, and in some cases, actually working with communities to challenge decisions. And what is very interesting that we're noticing is that there's sort of new and unusual alliances that are developing across actors with similar interests. So we're noticing in our 3 cases was very much on the West Coast that coastal communities, fishing communities have got similar interests and values to recreational groups, farming communities who have historically not really worked together, who are basically against this rampant mining, which is ongoing in South Africa. And the communities working with ourselves as researchers and other NGOs are basically increasingly challenging these EIAs, getting much more organized and very systematically challenging EIA and planning practitioners, as well as government, to follow due process. And so, there's a lot of letters going to the minister, to the director generals, and really trying to hold them to account. In some cases, we're actually involved in court cases with legal NGOs who are basically challenging decisions to approve mining or mining that is currently underway with their transgressions. And so while dialogue and collaboration is being explored and is taking place amongst sort of some stakeholders, at this stage, there is very little dialogue that's happening with all stakeholders, all actors. And as I said, we are pursuing other strategies to ensure that the rights and the needs of communities are respected. Thank you.